when I read that definition, thinking about initiation throughout the last thousands and thousands of years, I don't read it as abusive. I read it as the adult responsibility to transmit consciousness to children, to transform them into adults through a highly stressful process that involves altered states of consciousness. And when I read that definition, thinking of my experience in a program, same words, whole different meaning. And so I use the word stresses rather than abuses. And I'm going to get a little more into the definition of abuse and what is it that makes an intense stress abusive? Why is it that in indigenous societies they might use sleep deprivation, food deprivation, extreme amounts of pain, removed from the village? It's incredibly intense, and it's meant to be. Why is it that they can do that without it being abusive, without it impairing the development of the child? You know, and why is it that those same or similar methods in our society might lead to trauma and an impairment in of development? So, are we good up to this point?
Yes.
Any questions? Okay, so the distinct forms of institutionalized persuasion that I've identified, and again, everything I'm presenting here, I am asking you to comment, think about, challenge me, question, and collaborate. I'm sure I've left things off this list, and there's things on this list that I don't, like, I'm not an expert on Native American boarding schools by any means. I know enough to put it on a list, but I would love to know more. So if you happen to know about anything on this list, or maybe disagree, I would love to know. This is what I've identified as social systems that utilize institutionalized persuasion.
I think it's a very useful thought experiment. I really do. Because I think about the ways that cultures, the bar mitzvah for my culture, which is very, very stressful for a kid, but helps inculcate them into the values of society, or the Native Americans, or training, or tribes, and definitely things like that. So for me, this is a very useful way to think about it, and to think about when it becomes abusive. And in my view, it becomes abusive when you're not working with the child to achieve the child's development, but working against the child to shut the child down. To me, that's the distinction between a positive versus a negative kind of inculcation.
Yeah, I'll be talking about what my perspective now, what it is that makes one abusive and one critical to development. The distinct forms that I've identified so far are initiation ordeals in indigenous societies, Native American boarding schools, totalitarian or communist thought reform, re-education, and brainwashing programs, cultic groups, religious sects, abusive families. I have a question mark. I'm not sure what I think of that. I think it applies. Deprogramming from cults and terrorist groups, corporate training seminars, monastery practice, and teen residential treatment programs or reform programs. The author that really triggered a lot of this presentation is Frank K. Salter. He's an Australian political scientist and ethologist, which he studies the biology of human behavior. This is a strobe light flashing. This is kind of funny because I actually thought about having a strobe light back here and asking everyone to like focus on the lights. And this is a map, a multi-dimensional map, and so now we actually have this poetic justice here. But I can't think of this.
Receiving and rolling.
Thank you very much.
Just do your best, John Travolta.
So Frank K. Salter identified these as the characteristics of institutionalized persuasion, and he says that these characteristics are common in settings of brainwashing, in cultic groups, and indigenous initiation ordeals. Physical coercion and restraint, isolation from information, severance of interpersonal bonds, threat, physical debilitation, demand for petty compliance, prestige, testimonials, or strict system of rank, compassion at the point of collapse, control of milieu, intense peer pressure, ritual attacks, sleep deprivation, enforced dependence, statement of doctrine, and intense affiliation. He had these listed as a chart. Well, I guess that's pretty self-explanatory. According to Salter, some dynamics commonly found in brainwashing and cults are not found in initiation ordeals. Accusation, interrogation, degradation, and guilt through forced confession, apology, publicly revealing your inner self, systematic punishment and rewards, and routine obedience. So this is where we verge away from the process of initiation, which you can argue that the process of initiation is old enough to have affected the development of our brains, that our physical brain might actually be hardwired to go through an initiation process during adolescence. In industrialized societies, if you do not spontaneously adopt the values of your society, well, they got a program for that. In indigenous societies, everybody in the society went through an initiation, and it was triggered by your own development. In industrialized societies, that's not the case. It's a failure to spontaneously adopt the values, or to spontaneously adopt the values quick enough.